something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, g'day folks, how are you? A little bit early for the day, and it's because question time is just starting, or has started a little while ago. This is slightly delayed, and I'm not sure how much of it I'll be able to get. I am taking a feed from Sky News, but I'm going to put Anthony Albanese up here in the background and hit the appropriate play button. He is going to face a lot of questions about the bills that are being forced through today. And it seems that the Liberals are going to support them. They're crowing a little bit that the Labor Party have had to come to them to get support. And the Greens, of course, will fall in line with Labor. There are a couple of Nationals and a couple of Liberals who come out not supporting the bill in any way, shape or form. Senator Nabatjira-Price being one of those, and Senator Antic being another in the Senate. And a couple of Nationals in the lower house have also said they reject the bill wholeheartedly. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Question time should be interesting, I would say.
Extreme weather. In the last month, Queenslanders and Victorians have been hit hard. In Victoria, fires burnt through over 400,000 hectares of bushland. Authorities have been warning that the extreme conditions were the worst since the Black Summer. And the fires on the ground said the same thing. These fires were fast-moving, unpredictable and intense. Tragically, they claimed the life of Max Hobson. Max had come to cattle farming late in his working life, and he went about it with all his engineer's precision and with real passion. Our thoughts are with Max's wife, Julie, his loved ones, his friends, and his community. Over 1,000 farming properties were affected, and nearly 25,000 head of livestock lost. More than 1,340 structures across the state either damaged or destroyed.
Just want to interject. Did he say 25,000 head of livestock were destroyed? The fires didn't destroy 25,000 head of livestock. Certainly some of them died in the fires, but many of them required the farmers to put them down using weapons that will be banned after the legislation this Muppet wants to force through the government gets passed today.
The damage done to Ruffy, Alexandra and surrounds is devastating. In Ravenswood and Harcourt, which I visited, over 50 homes were destroyed. I saw where the Harcourt Co-op Cool store and its neighbouring cafe had stood. The power of fire was so evident standing right on that street. Over 90 small businesses used that Cool store. Local winemakers, brewers, apple growers. Years of their hard work burned away. So much was lost, yet the bravery and dedication of firefighters and volunteers saved so much more. As we were taken in by police and emergency services into that town, you could see the fire that had devastated one side of the road. Houses that were there reduced to a bit of a chimney or some sign that there was a dwelling there. And across the road, really a miracle, houses intact due to the extraordinary work of volunteers, rural firefighters, police, and just locals, neighbours fighting for their properties.
Of course, a lot of trees survived around these properties for some reason. No buildings survived, but a lot of grass around those buildings and certainly a lot of trees around many of those buildings survived quite happily. He hasn't answered any of those questions yet. Maybe he will, who knows? Well, he hasn't started answering anything.
Quite extraordinary, and if you looked at it, you would not think it was possible. At the Ravenswood Staging Centre, I had the opportunity to personally thank CFA members, not just from the local community, but they'd come from Rochester that had been devastated by those terrible floods just a short time ago. I visited seemingly like yesterday, Keswick and Mount Macedon as well to help. including Darcy. He was a young 16-year-old volunteer on his first day in the job. Mr Speaker, as the member for Bendigo knows, who I travelled with there with the Victorian Premier, these are communities where people know each other and they care about each other as well. When fires took out the Mount Alexander ABC transmission tower, Phoenix FM, which is 100% volunteer, local community radio station, they switched over to carrying the emergency broadcast for 3 days, saving lives.
Just want to point out that that community radio station that stepped up when the ABC's government-owned, people-paid-for infrastructure was not protected well enough from, well, something that could be reasonably well expected, a fire, that community radio station gets absolutely no government funding at all, gets absolutely no government help at all. It is through the good people of that area who have a desire to maintain a local connection with their own area that radio station even exists. Will the government consider maybe putting a little funding into community radio, particularly with regard to emergency services? I doubt it.
One CFA volunteer, Tyrone Rice, was out fighting fires when his own home was lost. In less than a week, the community had raised over $65,000 for his family. In Queensland, the devastation has been different, but the courage and generosity has been the same. Monsoonal rain, exacerbated by ex-tropical cyclone Koji, has caused widespread flooding across North Queensland. Previously, I travelled to Cloncurry with the Emergency Management Minister and with the Treasurer. And we were in Cloncurry and Mount Isa. The Minister went on to visit Julia Creek and Richmond afterwards, looking at the extraordinary impact that those floodwaters had had. And I thank the Mayor of Cloncurry and other community volunteers who were able to meet and thank for what they had done there as well. Tragically, one man died when his vehicle was trapped in floodwaters near Normanton. He and his loved ones are in our thoughts today. Primary producers have seen thousands of kilometres of roads and fencing destroyed, and around 50,000 head of livestock have been lost, at least.
At least. A lot of them shot with weapons that are going to be outlawed in the bill that will go before this Parliament today and into tonight, I'm sure, for debate. And into tomorrow. I noticed that he mentioned the firefighter who's had $65,000 donated to them. They lost their house, lost all their possessions, lost absolutely everything. The local community have come together to donate $65,000 to this firefighter. That's marvellous. I didn't hear him say the government was going to match those donations dollar for dollar or 2 for 1 even to help this firefighter dedicated to the community who's lost everything, maybe be able to rebuild. Didn't hear that coming from this piece of filth.
What I said to the remarkable SES volunteers in Hood's Lagoon and locals at the Claremont Bears Footy Club is the same message I took to Harcourt in Victoria. We have got your back. From response to recovery to rebuilding, we'll be with you every step of the way. In both states, we've made the disaster recovery allowance available, up to 13 weeks of support for people who have lost income. In Victoria, together with Jacinta Allen's government, we've provided $77 million in disaster recovery funding. This is support for emergency fodder, community recovery officers and primary producer grants up to $75,000.
I wonder if the Prime Minister has seen what the Jacinta Allen police force is doing to those fodder runs in Victoria at the moment. If you go through Facebook and check out any Victorian regional person's coverage, by the sound of it at the moment, you will see that there are hundreds of trucks and utes with trailers towing fodder, bales of hay, round, square, you name it, all shapes, all sizes, all designed to go and help feed the stock that managed to survive this horrendous fire event. But in Victorianistan, Jacinta Allen's government That's all right. His mate, he's the one who said, my very good friend, the member for Bendigo. It's her government that's stopping that fodder being delivered by the community to help out other community members.
As well as assistance for personal and financial counselling dealing with power outages and clean-up. The Defence Force have made some of their accommodation available as well in Victoria and in both states. I thank all those in police and emergency services, fire services, volunteers, the SES, the extraordinary people who step up at difficult times.
In trucks that are 35 years old, or I think that's the oldest one I've heard of so far, but usually around the 31 to 33 years of age. That's the length of the tooth in some of the Victorian fire trucks. Do you know what that makes them, folks? That makes them officially antiques. Any vehicle over 30 years of age is officially an antique. Yet, this muppet and his best friend, Jacinta Allen in Victoria, who has lied to the Victorian people hand over fist about raising the CFA's budget and has now been proven 100% a liar over that. These guys just want to try and beef it up and say, oh, you've done a great job. Well, they've done a bloody amazing job with antique.
In Queensland, we're working with David Crisafulli's government, who I also met with last Thursday in Brisbane. But we travelled there to Clermont with the minister. We've provided over $66 million in support to 30 different local government areas. This includes an $11.3 million primary producer support package, in addition to $21 million in disaster recovery grants. Almost $10 million for extraordinary disaster recovery assistance grants for small business, $7 million in emergency fodder for stranded livestock, and $11.5 million to repair the Cloncurry airstrip that's so important, vital, particularly for fly-in workers who work in the resources sector in the mines around Cloncurry as well. In addition to that, we've provided support for mental health support and personal hardship assistance. I know the whole Parliament cares about helping these communities get back on their feet. There's no politics in any of this. When natural disaster strikes, governments work to provide assistance, and I know that we always have the support of the Parliament to do so, and I thank all members of the House for doing so and for engaging. I'll continue to work with local members on what else can be done, and to say that, of course, this remains a difficult period, a difficult weather period in Sydney over the weekend and the central coast of New South Wales. There was a real impact as well on the impact of the extreme weather events. And
did this guy not grow up in Australia? We've been having hot weather every summer for as long as I've been alive, and I suspect probably as long as you have or longer. This guy every year ramps up, oh, it's so hot, oh, it's so hot. In Sydney, it's getting hotter because there's more cement, more roofs reflecting heat, more everything. Of course it's going to get hotter. You put more bloody cement and bitumen down instead of grass and trees, what are you going to get? Well, you're going to get hotter in the area where there's all that cement and bitumen.
Record rainfall in some of those communities, including in the member for Robertson's electorate and the member for Dobell's as well. This is a difficult period. I remind people as well, as a final thought, if it's flooded, forget it. We still, every time I go into a flood area, the police and people will tell you that people think that they can drive through and they know what it looks like. I know in the member for McKellar's electorate over the weekend as well, we saw examples of that. If you can't see the ground, you don't know what's under the water. You don't know if the road has slipped away. It is simply just not worth it. So please follow the advice. Our police, emergency services, volunteers, SES, they risk a lot in helping out their fellow Australians.
And don't get supported.
What they ask for is that they get listened to on that advice, and that way we'll keep Australians as safe as possible, even in what are difficult times.
On indulgence, the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased to join the Prime Minister in acknowledging the deep hardship being experienced by Australians across our country as they confront the devastating aspects and impacts of fire and floods. From communities facing catastrophic bushfire conditions along the New South Wales-Victoria border and in parts of South Australia and Western Australia, to families and businesses who are still reeling from widespread flooding in Queensland and northern New South Wales. Australians are once again being tested by a landscape that is both extraordinary and unforgiving. I'm always reminded of the beauty and the terror from Dorothea Mackellar's iconic poem. In recent weeks, I've been on the ground in flood-affected communities across North Queensland, in Cloncurry, in Julia Creek, in Richmond and Mount Isa, speaking directly to families, to pastoralists, to local leaders whose lives and livelihoods have been just turned upside down. And I've seen the number one thing you see in their eyes is exhaustion, just fatigue, but behind it, great anxiety for what the future holds and great pain for what they've gone through and great shock. I've also spent time with emergency services on the New South Wales-Victoria border in the Upper Murray, where I spent 17 years of my life as a farmer and where my family and community still lives. So it was very close and personal, and to see the damage that was done there firsthand only recently reminds me that those communities are too soon going through something that they went through in 2020 in the Black Summer fires. Similarly, for North Queensland, 2019 was a time of dreadful flooding. And so I want to say that when the weather is at its worst, Australians really are at their very best. And the most important thing is to acknowledge those who are directly affected. And that includes families who are forced to evacuate. But when fires and floods have an impact like this, we must always put front and centre our farmers, the people who work the land, the people who care for their livestock, the people who will only leave their farm if they absolutely have to. And when I looked at the picture of Max Hobson, and I pass on our deepest condolences to his family who lost his life in the Longwood bushfire, you see a farmer, an iconic bloke from the bush, stoicism, fortitude, calm, common sense. You can imagine him leaning on the rails at the stockyards, coping with everything, dealing with the highs and lows of life on the land. And it's a life that he has now lost, and his family and community are devastated. Those who've lost homes, who've lost stock, crops, machinery, fences, businesses, or treasured belongings, and those who are trying to keep going while carrying the emotional weight of having been through it all before. I want to place on record the opposition's gratitude to those extraordinary Australians who respond on the front line, our volunteer firefighters, our SES crews, our police, our paramedics, our defence personnel, our council workers, and the many community volunteers. A really big thank you. And as I met crews from the CFA, from Queensland, from the RFS in New South Wales, in the Tallangatta Incident Centre, in northeast Victoria, it was quite clear how they'd all just dropped everything to be there, and that's what you always see. Whatever they've left behind, they have done so willingly to come and lend a hand. Can I particularly thank our aviation crews and pilots? I've seen helicopter pilots in outback Queensland flying mission after mission from dawn till dusk, as exhausted as the people they are helping, knowing that just to get that last load of hay, just to pick up that last stranded person, just to see some evidence of where stock might be gathering so that you can help them and support them the next day. We thank them and every person involved in the planning, coordination and logistics that support these efforts. Mr Speaker, recovery is a long process. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes support, and it requires governments at every level to stay engaged, not just in the immediate crisis, but in the weeks and the months that follow. And in Richmond, I heard directly from local leaders and landholders about all those practical realities of recovery, restocking, rebuilding fences, restoring yards, managing animal welfare. It's always at the top of the list. The difference in anguish and heartbreak between a farmer who has lost his land and his fences but not lost cattle or sheep is a totally different experience from one who has. And the anxiety you have for your cattle as they recover is, it's beautiful to behold because it demonstrates that bond between those who manage the land and the spirit of Australia. But we heard something so important there that from the Mayor in Richmond. He said in words that stayed with me that disaster packages save lives, literally. In 2019, he said support announced in the midst of the crisis changed the course of people's lives and gave hope to those who felt they could not continue. And hope matters in disaster recovery. It's not abstract, it's real. And it's often the difference between despair and the determination to rebuild. That's why it's so important that assistance is delivered quickly. The goal must be to help people back on their feet, not to add further strain through complexity or bureaucracy at a time of such profound loss. And I want to assure Australians, as I know the Prime Minister has in these affected areas, that they're not alone. And they often feel that a lot of attention is paid in the days after the disaster, as it should be, and then those communities can fade from our public consciousness. Now, I know everyone in this parliament is determined that that not happen, that we are there for those communities over the years ahead. And remember that they are Australians who don't ask for help, but they need a lot of help. And so we must make sure that they get it. And Australia has faced disasters before, we'll face them again. Every time we're reminded not only of the power of nature, but the resilience of the Australian people. And I know that spirit will carry communities through the difficult days ahead. And the opposition stands with all those in this place and the other place to support them in whatever way we can.
Bloody hell, that's a fair old waddle on her behalf, isn't it? Albanese's getting up to give us a bit of a notice.
Oh, the Prime Minister with arrangements. That's right.
Thanks. I inform the House that the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors will be absent from question time today, and the Minister for Health and Ageing will answer questions on his behalf.
We shall now move to questions about those. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The families of the Bondi terrorist attack victims had to beg the Prime Minister through their grief and tears for a Commonwealth Royal Commission into anti-Semitism. The Prime Minister forced those families to juggle unimaginable grief with national advocacy. It was callous, it was unfair, and they are owed an apology. The Prime Minister dithered and delayed with a host of bogus excuses, citing nameless experts, saying it would take too long, arguing it would platform hate. Not once has the Prime Minister admitted to and said sorry for his mistakes. Can the Prime Minister just humble himself for once and simply say sorry?
Order. Order. We've dealt with this time question before. I hope it'll be the same measure applied if any ministers go over time. The Prime Minister has the call.
Mr Speaker, what happened on the 14th of December was a targeted, evil, anti-Semitic terrorist attack on Jewish Australians. And my heart breaks for every person, every family, every community that has been made to suffer because of that senseless hate-filled violence. I've attended homes, synagogues, private meetings, both in their homes, in my Sydney home for the moment, in my Sydney office, those families. I haven't had TV cameras with me and radio reporters. What I've done is engage respectfully with those people. I've said I feel the weight of responsibility for an atrocity that happened whilst I'm Prime Minister. And as I have said, I am sorry that this occurred. Sorry for the grief and pain that the Jewish community and our entire nation have experienced. Our responsibility is to channel that grief, that pain, that anger into meaningful action, making a difference. And that is what I have striven to do. I've said that we would implement in full the recommendations of the Anti-Semitism Envoy's report. Unfortunately, some of those recommendations, the most serious ones about vilification, did not receive the support of either the Coalition or the Greens in the Senate and therefore were not able to be pursued. We did in the immediate aftermath of the attack. Our priority was unashamedly about the safety of Australians. If you look at what has happened with terrorist attacks overseas, what often occurs is that one attack leads to another coordinated attack somewhere else as part of planning. Our first priority, unashamedly, on the Sunday night, on the Monday, on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, was not to worry about politics. Our priority was, were these people part of a cell? Would there be another attack at another place in Sydney? Would there be a follow-up attack in Melbourne? Were Jewish Australians being kept safe? Were the leaders of those communities being kept safe? We upgraded the security measures around the track. Our priority was that. What were the gaps that were missed in security as well through the National Security Committee that has met on almost a daily basis every day since December 14? That was absolutely our priority, was to get that right. Our second priority was to make sure, not that we do something in a year's time or 2 years' time, but to do something immediately. And the Parliament, the House of Representatives, passed legislation, not as strong as we would have liked in tackling anti-Semitism just before question time, but what we could get through. That was our priority, and we called a Royal Commission. Once we had the Royal Commissioner in place, once we had consulted the Jewish community about the terms of reference as well.
It's an interesting way. We're having a Royal Commission. We announced that Royal Commission once we had the Commissioner in place. Why would you have to have the Commissioner in place to announce that you're going to have a Royal Commission? You could announce you're having a Royal Commission and the Commissioner will be announced in due course when we make that selection. But no, if you do it the other way around, if you go and find the Commissioner and then announce that you're going to have a Royal Commission, you are in effect handpicking the Commissioner that you're putting into that role. And you can cherry pick. You can go around and ask a few questions of those that are suitable for that role. Find the ones that might be a little more open to suggestion, shall we say. Don't trust these filth people. Don't trust these filth people.
Give the call to the member for order, asking all members to show restraint today, of all days. Give the call to the member for Isaacs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. After the tragic events of the violent anti-Semitic terrorist attack at Bondi Beach last month, how is the Albanese government working to combat anti-Semitism, extremism and hate and keep all Australians safe?
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Isaacs for his question and his commitment, not just as a member of the Australian Parliament, but as also someone who is very committed to helping his fellow Jewish Australians and who travelled to Sydney just in the hours after this terrible attack on the first night of Hanukkah, where 15 Australians were murdered at Bondi Beach. They, of course, wounded dozens more, men, women and children. It was an anti-Semitic terrorist attack aimed at Jewish Australians, inspired by ISIS, the deadliest that has ever occurred on Australian soil. It was also an attack on every single Australian because it was an attack on our way of life in which the Australian covenant is that if people have any prejudice or hate, that's left in the customs hall. And here in Australia, we respect each other of different faiths, of different backgrounds, and we treat each other properly. Now, since the horror of that day, our priority has been to keep Australians safe, to combat anti-Semitism, extremism and hate, to bring an end to violence, to bring the nation together and to wrap our arms around the Jewish community, to be with them in their profound grief. We've announced a Royal Commission into anti-Semitism and social cohesion so people can tell their stories to inform meaningful action. Today, we have passed through this House laws to address both the motivation and the method of the anti-Semitic terror attack at Bondi. because the terrorists had hate in their hearts, but they also had high-powered rifles in their hands. We're taking action on both, tackling anti-Semitism, tackling hate, and getting dangerous guns off our streets. On Thursday, we'll come together in a National Day of Mourning, honouring the victims and all those impacted by the violence at Bondi. The theme that the Chabad community have chosen is Light Will Win, a gathering of unity and remembrance.
Now, I don't know if this twerp is going to go into exactly what he expects us to do on Thursday, but essentially he expects all Australians to come to a blinding stop for a minute of silence, remembering the Jews that were shot at Bondi. I can't remember the last time we had a national minutes of silence for a bunch of Australians that were shot or killed. I can't remember the nation coming to any kind of a halt for a minute's silence for those that are killed on our roads every day through the poor roads that they are driving on more than their driving ability. But I know the whole nation is meant to come to a grinding stop. Not just that, you're expected to light candles
And that
too.
is what the local community, led by their spiritual leader, Rabbi Ullman, who I've spoken with again this morning, really want to see. A fitting moment for our grieving nation to come together and reaffirm our commitment that in Australia, light triumphs over darkness.
Give the call to
Okay, maybe it's me. I'm fully prepared to believe it's me. I'm fully prepared to believe there are many, many people who are still very badly affected by what happened on December the 14th. But Australians and Australian nature is to move on, to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, give ourselves a good swift uppercut if required, and step on. This seems like it's going to be turning into something that we're going to be giving thanks and praise and security to the Jewish Australians for the rest of their life. And as somebody pointed out in the chat, these people don't represent themselves as Australian Jews. They represent themselves as Jewish Australians. Dreyfus, as you've just seen, has just come back from Israel. Home. Australia is not home. Australia is just where they work.
the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. After Australia's deadliest ever terror attack in Bondi, the families of victims wrote to the Prime Minister and said, quote, "We have endured more than 2.5 years of relentless attacks. Our children feel unsafe at school. Our homes, workplaces, sporting fields and public spaces no longer feel secure. It is an intolerable situation that no Australian should have to endure. Prime Minister, I ask again, will you apologise to Jewish Australians because you and your government did not listen?"
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks,
I mean,
Mr.
seriously,
Speaker.
aren't there more questions, better questions, more serious questions this woman could be asking now? Or is she just desperately trying to avoid the elephant in the room? Because by the sound of it, they've already voted on that legislation and forced it through to go through to the Senate, judging by Albanese's past tense in what he said previously. So I don't know. The last time I saw anybody like this woman, I was at a funeral and the white ladies were looking after it. I don't know what she's doing in Parliament.
I certainly acknowledge very directly the pain that Jewish Australians are feeling and that they have felt for some period of time. The idea that anti-Semitism began with the election of the government in 2022 is just not right. The Executive Council of Australian Jewry on the 25th of November 2018 said that the 12-month period ending 30th of September 2018 saw a 59% increase over the previous year in total anti-Semitic incidents in Australia involving threats or acts of violence. Josh Frydenberg, the then Treasurer, said on 10th of May 2019, anti-Semitism is on the rise here in Australia and the number of incidents has increased quite dramatically. the member for Barara said on the 7th of May 2019, I find it hard to believe that in 2019 we are witnessing anti-Semitic incidents on an unprecedented scale. Senator Andrew Bragg at the same time. I believe anti-Semitism is a rising problem.
Order. We don't need those sorts of commentary. Member for Barara is entitled to raise a point of order.
Point of order, Mr Speaker, on relevance. Prime Minister wasn't asked about the history of anti-Semitism in Australia. He was asked whether he apologised for his government failures not to do enough to deal with the anti-Semitism.
Prime Minister, order. As all members know, I can't direct any member to give a yes, no, or as the answer you would like. The Prime Minister is being directly relevant, giving information to the House about the exact topic he was asked about. Prime Minister has the call.
Let me be very clear, Mr Speaker. All governments should have done better. That is my point. The idea that anti-Semitism began 2 years ago with the change of government is false, and it's declared to be false by the comments of those opposite in senior positions. Despite the surge in anti-Semitism on their watch, did the Morrison government appoint a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism? No. Did they establish a joint operation bringing together the AFP and ASIO to combat acts of anti-Semitism? No. Did they introduce Australia's first ever hate speech laws? No. Did they legislate a crackdown on preachers and leaders who promote violence? No.
That's right.
We also enacted a landmark ban on the Nazi salute.
I'm sorry. I should have gone through each one of those individually, I know, and maybe I'll do that tonight. But just about every one of those points he's just listed off have been, if not complete, then at least partial failures on behalf of the Labor government, or they have been trying to and succeeded in introducing legislation that removes the freedoms of the people. They've done this against the will of the people. This twit thinks we forget.
We criminalised doxing, something that those opposite voted against. We've appointed Australia's first national student ombudsman. We've created and launched a national hate crimes and incidents database. We've imposed counter-terrorism financing sanctions on the white supremacist terrorist network Telegram. We expelled the Iranian ambassador for their interference in Australia. We directed the E-Safety Commissioner to tackle the proliferation of hateful online content. And we have now established a Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion.
Order. Give a call to the honourable member for McNamara.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Deputy Prime Minister. What is the Australian government's response to combating anti-Semitism, and why is a bipartisan approach important?
The call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, I thank the member for his question. Back in May of 2024, I visited Mount Scopus College, a Jewish school in Melbourne, with the member for McNamara, who is indeed an honoured old boy. And we attended there because the day before there'd been a horrible anti-Semitic slogan spray painted on the school's wall. It was a clarifying experience for me. It's obviously terrible that kids have to look at that hate directed at who they are, but actually, like
one of the first lessons that I remember when I went to school, to primary school, probably to kindergarten, was sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Do you think the Jewish people understand that at all? Should that be part of the curriculum when they come to be a Jewish Australian? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Generations of Australians grew up with that. Now that seems to be changing because, well, they can hurt those words badly.
Was an eye-opener. Security there is not unlike security here, but whereas we are adults who have made the choice to be in public life, these are kids who have no choice. And the idea that children are receiving their education, that they are learning to experience the world behind large walls protecting them from the world is just so sad. And that's not a reflection on the kids. That is, of course, a reflection on the world that is outside. That is a reflection on Australia today. Anti-Semitism has been around for a while, and in truth, that kind of security on Jewish community facilities has been there for many years. But anti-Semitism has become much worse since October 7, 2023, and the way in which life for Jewish Australians has been compromised is profound. It is not okay that Jewish students at universities feel uncomfortable wearing the kippah. It is not okay that Jewish artists have effectively been cancelled. Now, we understand that there is much more to do, but our government has acted against anti-Semitism. We have made more criminal, more forms of hate speech. We have appointed an envoy to combat anti-Semitism, and we've now committed to implementing her report in full. And we would have liked to have done more in that regard this week, but we are grateful for whatever we can do this week amongst all of us, because it takes all of us, which is a point that is well made by the American Jewish Committee in its call to action against anti-Semitism, where it says, when considered only through a partisan lens, anti-Semitism is not being countered but instrumentalised. Anti-Semitism must not be a partisan issue used as a wedge within the Jewish community. Especially in advance of elections, we encourage candidates and elected officials to be mindful of politicisation and reach across party lines to address anti-Semitism. These are wise words. We are only going to rid the scourge of anti-Semitism in this country if we all rise above our parties and do it together.
Say it with me. Anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. If you say it enough, you might convince yourself you're an anti-Semitist. You might. I get the feeling that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to brainwash, and they'll certainly succeed with the weak of mind. Oh, maybe we are anti-Semitist. We're not anti-Semitist. Certainly there might be some of that feeling in some quarters, but the vast majority of Australians don't have an anti-Semitic bone in their body. We have a bone called the fair go bone. And if we find out that somebody we've been giving a fair go hasn't been giving us a fair go, well, we call that not giving that a fair shake of the sav. No, maybe I've got my metaphors crossed there. Beg your pardon. However, you get the idea. If we deal with you in good faith and discover that you are not dealing with us in good faith, that elicits a whole different reaction from Australians. And I'll be honest, it's not anti-Semitic to think that the Jewish folks in business particularly look after themselves first and everybody else. Right.
Order. The member for Fisher is just going to cease interjecting because I'd like to hear from the member for Wentworth with her question.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Radical extremism, Islamist and other forms is a threat to Jewish Australians and all Australians, as we saw so devastatingly in Bondi on December 14. We have had de-radicalisation programs in place for many years, but extremism is still taking root. How does the government measure the current effectiveness of these de-radicalisation programs, and how effective are these programs at all? You know, we do have the Richardson Review and part of the Royal Commission coming up, but is the government planning to take any other actions in terms of de-radicalisation in particular before then? Thank you.
The call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Wentworth for her question, and I praise her unreservedly for her role as a local member in what has been a devastating time for her local community, and not just the Jewish community, but of course Bondi is such an iconic place, and the local member has shown extraordinary leadership and capacity in my view, and I thank her for that. I will ask the Minister to supplement, but I would say that radical Islamic extremism is a major problem. We know that that is the case. We know that hate preachers can cause a real problem in distorting Islam and creating a circumstance where people are full of hate.
Hate preachers are distorting Islam. And yet the provision that they've left in this new legislation gives those preachers a loophole if what they are preaching is written in the Quran. Ever read the Quran? It's not the kind of book you want to read your kids at night time going to bed, I can tell you, not unless you want to make them have horror dreams. So what's he actually referring to? That? Well, I'm bloody sure he hasn't got the vaguest idea what he's referring to.
And we saw an expression of hate motivated by ISIS, an ideology that isn't about any state, is about an Islamic caliphate around the world. Often this is difficult as the examples come from what is a father and son. It's much more difficult to detect, as the ASIO Director General has reported. A big threat is sole actors, an individual actor. In this case, the father and son discussing these things over the dinner table or in private quarters, not engaging in electronic measures, communication that can be detected, means it is much more difficult. But the government has a range of programs. That is certainly something as well that the Richardson Review will look at, and I'll ask the Minister to supplement.
The Leader of the House.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker, and thanks, Prime Minister.
This should be good.
The counter-terrorism and violent extremism strategy was released again last year, where we renewed the different programs that we run.
Before this fellow outlines to us just exactly what a star campaigner he is in this particular ministry that he's head of, remember one thing, or a couple of things. This is the bloke who had secret meetings to get the ISIS brides delivered safely back into Australia quietly without any media. This is the guy who asked the people's representative, that person from the bureaucracy, the note taker, to leave his office when he had representatives of the Australian aid groups who were bringing the ISIS brides back. He didn't want any notes to be taken about what he said to them, and in fact had the note taker leave the room. Do you think that's the actions of an honest minister, folks? Well, if you think that's so, then can I recommend you go and watch the BBC series Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. Some think it's a comedy series. I shit you not, it's a documentary.
They're important programs and there is regular measuring of them. The challenge that we have is terrorism itself is changing as well. If I give simply these statistics, as at January, as at a couple of days ago, we've had since 2014, 189 people charged as a result of counter-terrorism operations. Right now, we have 35 people who are currently before the courts. 18 of them, 18 of the 35 are children. And so what we used to have to monitor in terms of organised cells of people often in their 20s and 30s is very different now. And in terms of the ideology, we are getting mixed ideologies. We're getting seriously mixed ideologies. So you'll have someone, for example, whose ideology...
Hang on a minute. 18 of those 35 that they've got in custody of children. How many kids did the ISIS brides bring back into Australia? I want to say at least 6. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. Let's keep a bit of remembrance on that figure, because it'd be interesting to see if any of the ISIS kids wind up adding to the number 18.
It will be a mixture of Nazism, of the sort of radicalisation that you've just described, and environmentalism. And this will all be mixed up where the only common theme is violence. That does mean for our agencies, the threat now is more complex. People are radicalising younger and faster and predominantly online.
The call to the honourable member for Macarthur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. What is the Albanese government doing to strengthen our laws to combat anti-Semitism, hate and extremism after the Bondi terror attack?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. On the 14th of December 2025, the deadliest terrorist attack on Australian soil occurred at Bondi Beach. The terrorists had hate in their hearts and guns in their hands. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Anti-Semitic, hateful and extremist conduct is unwelcome, unacceptable and has no place in Australia. Just 4 days after this abhorrent attack, the government announced a package of legislative reforms to target those who spread hate, division and radicalisation. The government moved with urgency and care, consulting with experts and stakeholders, most importantly, the Jewish community, to prepare legislation that deals with both cracking down on hate speech and taking sensible action on firearms. I thank my parliamentary colleagues for their engagement on this legislation. I also acknowledge the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security for its scrutiny of the exposure draft that led to this bill. These new laws being debated in the Parliament today specifically target those who seek to spread hatred, including those who seek to disrupt social cohesion in our community, and so critically, those who seek to radicalise our youth. As the Minister said previously, it is a shocking fact that since 2001, around 120 people have been convicted of terrorism offences, and of that cohort, 10 were children. However,
just on that last thing, yes, they do have pre-prepared statements. This is a question that was asked by an ALP party member to an ALP lackey. So they have this prepared. This is always how it works. Doesn't matter which side of government they're in power, and they have these pre-prepared soft questions that come every other question, if you like, except the independents tend to throw a few soft ones as well. So, yes, you'll see a lot of pre-prepared speeches from very underprepared politicians. That speech, no doubt, prepared by an advisor, and all this crazy cow needs to do is be able to read.
Today, of the 35 people before our courts, around half of them are minors. This unprecedented radicalisation of our youth must stop. We will not allow extremists to groom and brainwash our children into radicalisation, hate and terrorism. These new laws also create a regime for listing organisations whose leaders engage in hate speech or promote violence or racial hatred. The laws also amend the Migration Act to introduce new grounds, enabling the Minister to refuse and cancel visas on the basis of hate-motivated conduct and offences relating to the spread of hatred and extremism. Organisations that proffer these hateful ideologies must be outlawed, and their composite members must be held accountable. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, some of the cowards who spread hate as part of one such group announced they would be disbanded.
Yes, is the answer, Chris. Yes, these laws are going to be retrospective. They'll be able to go back and look at everything we've posted and decide whether or not we've incited people into some form of racial hatred, be that, anti-Semitic, meaning against the Jews, or anti-Sikh, because they're the only two groups apparently that this legislation protects. It doesn't protect Christians. Be aware of that. This legislation doesn't protect Christians at all.
Ending in anticipation of the effectiveness of these laws. The events of the 14th of December were horrific and must never happen again. And these new laws send a clear message that this conduct will not be tolerated in Australia.
Call to the member for Barara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question's to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, New South Wales Labor Premier Chris Minns has said sorry to the Jewish community for his handling of the anti-Semitism crisis that led to the murder of 15 people at Bondi. The Jewish community wants...
Hang on a minute. Are we back to him asking Albo to apologise, to say sorry? I've heard him say sorry 100,000 times to the Jewish community, sorry for being the dickhead, sorry for being on... He hasn't taken any responsibility, but they're not asking him to take responsibility. He said sorry. Why would we waste questions? This is meant to be the alternative government, people. For God's sake, move on. There are so many better things you could be attacking the Labor government of the day on than pissing about trying to get Albanese to apologise to the Jewish people when 3 questions already, he's done basically all of that. And what are you going to do with it? Oh, finally, he's apologised. Big deal. Move on.
To hear their Prime Minister say sorry. For the 3rd time, why won't you say sorry too?
Order. Call to the Prime Minister.
I repeat that I'm sorry that this occurred, and it occurred on my watch as Prime Minister, something I...
Did we hear that? He said he's sorry. Sorry, it happened on his watch. Sorry, I was the Prime Minister. I'm really sorry I was the Prime Minister when am I so sorry? I'm very sorry it was the Prime Minister when this
I've
happened.
said consistently, privately, publicly, said in my first answer as
Order.
well.
Members on my left.
But what I won't do,
Order. The Leader of the Opposition, I am asking all members, I'm pleading with all members to show restraint, respect for people in the gallery, the hundreds of thousands of people are watching this. Our words really matter. I'm asking all of the Parliament to come together so that we can hear the Prime Minister.
Let me just...
I think the Speaker is the only one who realises the gravitas of today and what these performances, these actors are putting on, means for them, their future, and the future of this nation.
Say this. When Port Arthur happened, the Parliament came together. No one saw that as a political opportunity. When...
Order.
Because Kim Beazley gave every support, as the Leader of the Opposition indicated to me on the Sunday evening of 14th of December, every support would be given to the government.
Order.
When the Link Cafe siege happened, not a single dollar went to any of those victims from the Commonwealth Government. We provided, though, every support to what was then the Abbott government at that time. When the Bali bombings occurred, people didn't see that as an opportunity for politics. People saw that as the need for the national interest to be put first. I am devastated, as all Australians are, at what has occurred. The fact that I'm Prime Minister while it has occurred, I've acknowledged repeatedly. That is a source of sadness, and I'm sad that every government has not done better on anti-Semitism.
Is that enough? Move on. He's sorry. Okay, he's more sorry that he was Prime Minister when it happened, because that's what he's sorry for. If you listen to what he's saying, I'm sorry I was the Prime Minister when this happened. He's not saying, I'm sorry that the laws that I allowed to be introduced into this country that allowed an influx of people who come from cultures that aren't necessarily aligned with an Australian Western Christian democracy into this nation. He hasn't apologised for any of that, but I'm not sure that the Muppets on the Liberal National Party side, the opposition, know that that's sort of what the problem is. I don't know what they're seeking here. They're wasting time.
Including mine. What I won't say, though, is that anti-Semitism began when my government was elected, because that is just absurd.
I also didn't hear in the last question for him to admit that anti-Semitism began when his government was elected, even though he thinks that his government was elected the most recent time. It wasn't. We're talking about the last time. And there has been some significant changes in the way people's attitudes have been displayed by the media over those intervening years. That's, for me, the most that has changed. Albo Sleazy and crew have just continued to muppet along.
What I won't do, what October 7 did happen, and there hasn't yet been an independent review of those events of October 7, but in Israel, because they have been getting on with the response. We responded when October 7 happened.
Order.
We came together in this Parliament and passed a resolution unanimously at that time.
Order. Members on my left.
I'll tell you what I won't do. I won't let the terrorists off the hook by pretending that the atrocity that they committed was not the result of their choices and their actions. This was not a random event. This was an anti-Semitic terrorist attack inspired by ISIS, conducted by a father and son.
So, haven't heard the words radical Islamist or radical Islam out of his mouth, but ISIS were, of course, the most radical arm of Islam. If you were around long enough to remember the orange jumpsuits and the beheadings, many of which can quite plausibly be looked at and say they were green screened, just between you, me, and the gatepost. However, no, it's not. Let's go back to this muppet.
Perpetrated in the name of a perverted, murderous version, as they saw it, of Islam. They bought the guns, they fired them into the crowd. They killed 15 innocent people and wounded dozens more.
How many Australians have done that since, I don't know, John Howard introduced the gun laws here in Australia? How many Australians have charged off into the most densely populated area in Australia and started firing shots and killed anybody like that? I can't think of, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. And yet it's every law-abiding Australian gun owner who's going to be punished rather than this immigrant who came in from India or wherever the hell he came from and didn't have Australian citizenship, but was able to get a gun license and accumulate 6 weapons, which now apparently is, God, how could you do that? You may as well start your own army if you're getting 6 weapons. Now they're just trying to steal your freedom from you folks, to disarm you.
And the idea that they are not responsible for those actions is something that I certainly will not do.
Order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Home Affairs. Why is the passage of the Albanese government's gun reform so important for Australians? What would it have meant to the Bondi terror attack, and what opposition has there been?
Call to the Leader of the House and the Minister for Home Affairs.
Thanks very much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Werriwa for the question. In responding to the anti-Semitic terror attack, we need to deal with the motivation and we need to deal with the method. We are dealing with 2 people there who had horrific anti-Semitic bigotry in their minds and in their hearts. And they had weapons they should not have had as those individuals. I don't think anyone argues that those individuals should have been able to have weapons. And we need to be able to respond to the method that they used as well. The vast majority of gun licence holders in Australia take their licence.
Notice that he said we need to respond to the method. He acknowledged that it was, the gun holders who did the damage. He doesn't acknowledge that the way to fix that is through better licensing conditions. And even trying to get your license these days is very, very hard. But I would have thought a baseline point of being able to get an Australian gun license is being Australian.
Seriously and are responsible individuals. And I say to those people, these changes are not targeted at you. There are claims that have been made by some of those opposite, which are simply not true. Our laws will not be a blanket ban on firearms. Our laws will not stop Australian athletes from competing or accessing the equipment they need. Our laws will not stop pest controllers or sporting shooters, those with a genuine need. Our laws will not stop farmers and primary producers from performing their daily tasks. But the question that is right to ask is what the reforms will do when you reduce the number of guns in the community, when you strengthen the National Firearms Agreement, when you strengthen background checks, when you improve intelligence sharing, and when you restrict licences as far as practical to Australian citizens. And the critical question that came to a head in a vote today where those opposite did not distinguish, they did not seek to amend, they opposed the lot in the way they voted on the gun laws today, is what would these laws have meant for those two men?
Order.
Because there's been a lot of discussion, and we heard the New South Wales debate, should there be 6? Should recreational shooters be able to have 6 firearms? Should it be 4? Should it be 5? How many would those individuals, those two people, how many firearms would they be permitted to have under the laws today that the government supported and the opposition opposed? And the answer is 0. Under those laws, those...
I'm getting a little hope that the opposition didn't support the gun laws after I heard that they'd formed a bit of a deal where they would. Bear in mind, this is delayed and I may have my messaging out of the timeline, so things may have changed.
Two people would have been able to access 0 firearms. What are the reasons? Citizens.
If he'd have done his frigging job at the border, the thing he's in charge of, these two individuals shouldn't have got into the country. They certainly, in the father's case, shouldn't have been able to get a gun licence.
Only citizens would be able to get a licence. The firearm licence holder was not an Australian citizen. The firearms that they were using would not have been available to them. The son who didn't have a firearms licence in any event, had he sought one or had the father sought one, Auscheck and the intelligence information that we had would have been cross-checked before a licence could be issued. All of these things result in one very simple question. Do you believe those two people should have been allowed to have those guns? And every member on this side today voted to say no, they should not.
So he's just admitted it's a failure of process. Those two individuals got guns due to a failure of process. So how is tightening the already restrictive gun laws on law-abiding Australians who committed no crime, shot no Jew, how's that going to change things? These people are not smart. We cannot leave them in the position of power they have. You understand that, don't you?
The Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Shayna Gutnick, whose father was tragically killed during Australia's deadliest ever terror attack in Bondi, publicly wrote, and I quote, "Australia did not fail quietly. It failed loudly, repeatedly, and with full knowledge. Its government watched hatred grow and chose to do nothing. They minimised it. They excused it. They dismissed Jewish warnings as noise." Prime Minister, these are not my words. These are the words of the victims' families. Can the Prime Minister finally humble himself and just say sorry?
Clearly they're not listening to me.
Order. Minister
Just
Fisher.
so sorry. Look, if that's the best the Leader of the Opposition can muster, she's had since December the 14th to come up with what she's going to say on the first day back at Parliament. She's had since December the 14th to figure out what she's going to say today and what she is going to get her party to attack the Labor Party on today, the first day back for 2026. So far, every one of the Liberal national questions come from the opposition side of the floor have been asking the opposition leader to say sorry, which he apparently has done, certainly to my satisfaction. Not that I give a flying hoot, but he's done it to my satisfaction. If it's not good enough for the Jewish people, I think that has more to do with the Jewish people than it does anything else. I don't understand the political point this woman is trying to make out of it, and it's not a political point worth winning. It's not going to gain her enough of the field. If this is the quality of Liberal leadership, I can't wait for Pauline Hanson to trash them at the next election.
Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I met with Shayna yesterday. I spoke with her last week. I spoke with her community leaders. She's from a PAD community in Melbourne on a regular basis as well. Rabbi Moshe Khan, who's a good friend of the member for...
It's almost like the Liberal Party questions are designed to let Albo say, this is how much begging and sorriness I've done. I've been here, I've gone there, I've seen this fella, I've seen that rabbi, I've been to this place, I've been to that Jew's house, I've been to this synagogue, I went to that school. Every friggin' question. The Liberal Party give Albo an opportunity to go on the sorry lap and explain just how extensive his sorry lap was to the Jewish nation. Shit, you not, this Liberal Party are fucking moronic.
McNamara, I met her husband. It was a very warm meeting. It was a very warm and generous meeting. And can I say this? The contrast between some of the rhetoric that those opposite have engaged in and the warmth and generosity of this grieving community has been quite extraordinary. I have been into homes, into synagogues, had meetings, had engagements with small groups, one-on-one, with groups of up to 30. First meeting, I was in homes on December 16 for the first time. Since then, I must say a number of people I regard now have become friends because of the extent of the engagement. I visited people in hospital. I have engaged with people in every forum, and there is no one who has asked to speak to me who has not had a meeting. And at the same time, what we have had is loud shouting. We had shouting that the Parliament had to be resumed before Christmas, but then when we resumed it, we were resuming it too soon. We had shouting that we had to introduce legislation based upon the anti-Semitism envoy's report, but when we introduced it, they opposed it. They opposed it.
The Prime Minister will pause. Order. Leader of the Opposition on the point of order.
On relevance, Mr. Speaker, my question was very pointed. Can the Prime Minister finally humble himself and just say sorry for failing to act?
Can he fully humble himself, I think was what she said there. I mean, she's obviously working for the Australian Council of Jury or whatever other Jewish influence organisation she holds strongly to in the Liberal Party. And there are a few. The factions inside the Liberals each have their own sort of little Jewish club, I think. So this is about getting Albo to prostrate himself publicly in the House, trying to embarrass him into saying sorry. We know the useless bastard couldn't say sorry for 3 weeks. We know that. We lived that. We understand it. We remember it. It's in fact why, in great part, they dropped 4 percentage points in the latest poll, more than the Liberals dropped. But the Liberals made the news because they dropped below One Nation. One Nation, well, they didn't drop below One Nation. One Nation catapulted above them in the opinion polls. And they're coming for the Labor Party too. And how easy, it seems, are the Liberals going to make it? Well, they won't, because they're a lying pack of mongrels, and they'll do whatever they can to make sure that Pauline and One Nation never get a foothold. But that's our alternative we're looking at right there. That thing who's asked the same question 6 different friggin' times, and now it's become clear. Look at the smug look she's giving him across the bloody table. She wants him to beg forgiveness, beg for mercy, beg forgiveness, say, I'm so sorry at that table in that place. To what benefit? Well, certainly not to the benefit of Australians, is it?
Prime Minister spoke directly about the person that you asked him about. He couldn't be more directly relevant when he described what had happened. That I can't make him do what you wanted the answer, but I can ensure that he is being directly relevant, and he has been completely directly relevant to the question he was asked.
Speaker, you don't have to bang lecterns to show you're concerned. What you have to do is to show respect and engage in an orderly, respectful way. We have responded in that way in the meetings with the Jewish community. We didn't wait. We have appointed the special envoy to combat anti-Semitism. Within days, we began the the legislation. We'd already
I would have phrased that differently. Within days, they began the cover-up, but, you know, that's just me.
appointed, of course, a National Student Ombudsman. We have appointed David Gonski to look through the education schemes. We've gone through. Professor Craven has
to learn, to come together in a spirit of collective strength and to go forward knowing that light will always prevail over darkness. As the Prime Minister said, the government has engaged with members of the community, particularly Jewish Australians,
Haven't
and
we
this
seen this
response.
already?
The government has established a Royal Commission on
Jump. I'll jump it again, see what it does.
Call to the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister told Australians that national security experts advised against a Commonwealth Royal Commission. In establishing the Royal Commission, has the Prime
maybe I've
Minister
come to the end of the broadcast.
By the government,
Yeah,
but
that's what's happened. I'm sorry, they cut the stream off on us. That's all right. I was probably going to vomit anyway. I think we've seen enough, haven't we? If that's the best performance that Susan Ley, the white funeral lady, can bring to the Parliament for the Liberal National Party, if you are in the Liberal National Party, if you are a Liberal National supporter, you're stuffed. They have had since December the 14th to come up with a very rigorous attack on what has been a pretty piss-poor performance from the Albanese government. Instead, they focused on one particular issue, which seems incredibly important to them. And they would have you believe that it's even more incredibly important to a very, very small selection of the Australian public. A very small section. So why is there so much angst and effort to try and get Albo to lay prostrate on the Parliament table saying, oh, yeah, I was a bit slow saying sorry. And he'd done that. He may not have said he was a bit slow doing it. We had a metered response, a measured response, yada, 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 yada. And I understand there are probably things that, as the Prime Minister, you do need to take advice on and take into account before making decisions. I don't think that takes 3 or 4 weeks. I think he's a weak leader, but I can't see anybody better than him standing behind him. Can you? Tanya Plibersek? Oh, God, that just leaves a sour taste in the mouth, almost as bad as Penny Wong. However, I think that the Liberal Party showcased today exactly why Pauline Hanson's One Nation, I think they're just One Nation these days, have been able to gain the support of so many Australians. And if they think that support is going to end anytime soon with performances like Susan Funeral White Lady came out with today, she's going to hand the support that Pauline Hanson needs to not just gain control of the Parliament, but to become the Prime Minister, the lead party of this nation. She would have to do a few things to get to become the Prime Minister, but you get the idea. They have the first best opportunity in Australian history to change the status quo. And this is what the Australian people have been calling for, an alternative to the uni party that has been supposedly making decisions in our best interest for all of our lifetimes, when in fact all they've been doing is treating us like a money battery, bleeding us dry. And the best alternative the Liberal Party can come up with is that woman and their strategist. It's not just her. I can't just blame her. It's not just her. It's the strategists behind the Liberal Party who have, since December the 15th, been thinking about how they can attack the government best on this and the laws that the government rudely wanted to ram through. Now, It sounds like those have been voted on, and the gun laws at least haven't been passed through. And I don't know, haven't seen any reportings on other things at the moment, but I haven't really been watching, so I'll go and have a look. If that's the case, then, pardon me, there won't be any debates on it because it's being pushed back. The other side of it, the anti-Semitic side of it, I get the feeling they're supporting that pretty strongly. And there is so much inside of that that could get you and I in trouble. Not so much the anti-Semitic preacher, but those of us who would like to trouble the government on the things they say and do, who would like to draw them or draw attention to the people who may have missed some of the bullshit from the government and ultimately would like the government brought to account for their failures to look after the Australian people. So the Liberal Party have proven today, with all of their intelligent people, with all their history, with all of their strategists, with all of their know-how and great power, the best they could do was ask the same question half a dozen times, probably more, and gain no ground out of it whatsoever on the first day back. That's a very, very sad predicament if you happen to be a supporter of the Liberal National Party. It'd be almost enough, I would say, to label them road dickheads and to be avoided at all costs. We'll see you later.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's ride!